Hello, welcome to Lunchtime BABLing. My name is Shea Brown. I'm the CEO of BABL AI, a company that audits algorithms for bias, ethical risk, and effective governance. I'm joined by Bryan and Jeffery Recker. Thanks for joining. Um, yeah, I think that there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I'm struggling to figure out what we want to talk about. And so, as always, I'm going to throw it to Jeffery because Jeffrey's the idea guy. What should we talk about today?
Idea guy. I just can't shut up. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I just keep going, like the Energizer bunny. Um yeah, so okay. I, we've got a topic. We've got a very exciting topic actually. Um so for some context really quick, Shay is working on a new certification, AI governance for business professionals. Kind of help people who are thinking about implementing AI in their organization understand what AI is, the risk associated with it, how to govern it. It's a really good foundational certification, and Shay's building it right now at this time of this recording. It's available to enroll. I think it'll be done next week, Shay, right?
Yeah, if
Yep.
everything goes according to plan, yes.
Okay. But like 2 nights ago, Shay sent Bryan and I a little tease to something he was working on, and that is a new framework. And Bryan and I were just giggly about it, and like this is just perfect. This is incredible. Like, where does this come from? And I think we need to talk about this new framework that you've developed for this program. But I want to talk about it broadly because I think it's super important for basically anybody in a business right now. So yeah, Shay, maybe you want to tell us what this framework is and how you came up with it, and then I think Bryan and I got a million questions for you.
Yeah. So frameworks are, yeah, great mental models for thinking about how to solve problems. Basically, that there's procedural, there's conceptual frameworks, and we have a ton. Like Babel develops a lot because we're very rigorous about these sorts of things. We want to have like easy to understand. Um, and so one example of that is the CETA framework. So that's context, input, decision, action. That's something that we've been teaching for a very long time. And what we found is everybody's like, that's amazing. They're using it day to day. All of our students that graduate are using it all the time as a contextual way of thinking about identifying the socio-technical system that AI lives in, and it's great for risk, right? And so when I was developing this, um, I wanted to come up with something similar regarding value. Like, how do you identify the value? Because we're always talking about risks here. And I got this idea from basically people asking me this question all the time. What AI tool should I be using in my business? What's the tool to use? And I'm constantly thinking that's not the right question to ask, because what you want to be focused on is the business value. And so I really wanted to come up with a framework that kind of had this idea of business value. And because we audit so many systems, we see where they fail and where they succeed. I needed to come up with some way of easily transferring this knowledge to get it packaged. So long walks, I think 3 or 4 long walks later, thinking about this, and it's really delayed the course actually to come up with this. I finally sort of packaged it into it's like the AI value framework. And the trick is that it spells out value. And so I won't go through it all right now because, well, there's too much. But basically, it's visualize your operations. That's V. Ask the right questions. Link to AI capabilities. Understand feasibility and risk. And then experiment and evaluate. And I'll leave it at that. But the basic idea is don't start by asking, what tool do I use? Start asking, what business value is AI going to bring and where? And then start from there.
I Bryan, before you jump in, I have to say this really quick. For those of you who are new to Shay, or don't know Shay as well as Bryan and I know him, one of my just like favorite little things you do is how often you're like, I'm trying to solve this really hard problem. And it's usually something like I couldn't even wrap my head around how to solve it. And then Shay's just like, yeah, I went for a walk. I went to the gym. I had a beer and I just thought through it. And then it's just the aha moment. Every one of these I love.
Yep.
Bryan, go ahead.
Yeah, it really is incredible. And what's great about this, what I really like and what jumped off the page to me was just how it organizes your thoughts. And I'm clearly a person who thinks more from a business perspective. And what I've really come to learn is, I think Shea, you helped me. I was giving some speeches on AI governance and the role of governance, risk, and compliance is either to create value or eliminate the destruction of value, right? So when we think about governance and the governance certificate, it's awesome that this is spelled out in a really just step by step, organized thought, really great questions to ask yourself, really where you should focus should be to help build value. And I think that's what's so like it connects so well to the whole concept of governance within an organization. And what we're talking about at Babel day in and day out is the unique risks and the unique value. And that's maybe how we should start calling it, the unique value that AI governance brings to an organization. And I think it just is so understandable to anybody who has basic level of knowledge with of business. And the use cases, I'm really excited to start diving into more use cases because we have all that experience in the field, as well as just conversations with people generally in the space. People are all asking the same questions that this is really like firming up and giving them that roadmap to success. And I really, really like what it is. And I think a lot of people find a lot of value out of it. There we go.
So I will say that like it ties in very the course is it ties in very carefully with the course, right? This comes a little bit later in the course, kind of midway through this first course of 3. And the whole beginning part of the course, I basically was breaking down what is AI, but not so much what is AI like what's the buzzword type thing, but what are the features of AI, and how are these features kind of unique and relevant? Like what are the and I go into like what's the feature of an AI model versus an AI system, and I had to, so the third part of this, like the link to AI capabilities, you need to know those features of the AI system in order to do that step. Because you need to know that like, oh, it's better to use a large language model here, or I should maybe just take some of our data and train like a predictive model on this. And so it's something that does tie into some basic level of knowledge, but it really is basic. Like you don't have to be any kind of mathematician or engineer or scientific even in terms of like the way you approach the world. It's just sort of pointing out a few basic properties of AI and understanding how those basic properties of AI can bring value to specific points in your business, in terms of making things faster, making them better, making them more robust, more efficient, cheaper, whatever. Those are all things that people can wrap their mind around, especially if they understand their business. And that's the assumption, of course.
Yeah, oh, Bryan, you got something?
I was laughing. I was like, yeah, the assumption is that they actually know their business. So, we don't need to know AI until we know our business. But once you figure out your business, we'll teach you how the AI to deploy it. I think that was funny.
I'll also say I like how you're contextualizing this because you're kind of answering something I didn't know that I see all the time as well. Because I think because of the industry that we're in, we're constantly highlighting the risk of AI, the implications of AI, whether it's bias, whether it's compliance issues, whatever it is. And so often I think, I literally gave a talk this morning, and one of the questions was, all around fear of compliance. Like, well, what do I even do here, right? And I think because of the nature in which we exist in at Babel, because we're talking so much on these potential risk and flaws of AI and being cautious and all of this stuff, people do it gets scary. Or people are talking to us because they are working in an organization. They're trying to figure out how to implement this, and just that inherent fear of like, what is AI and like, what's this going to change? Am I going to get sued? Am I going to have to displace? Am I going to have to, do we make a mistake along the way? Are we implementing the wrong stuff? And I like that you're contextualizing this almost in a proactive way rather than a reactive way. And I think you're kind of answering something that I don't even know how to explain this. I always have this problem. I don't know how to explain what's in my head. But I just like that you're framing it in this way about let's find the value of AI now, and then as we implement it, go in with this particular approach, this particular framework. I don't know. I'm like rambling at this point.
No, I mean, I think this has been boiling for a while for me as well, because we do focus so much on risk, and a very major risk, and we talk about it in the courses too. And the second course in the certification will be solely focused on the risk. A major one is operational risk, and of course financial risk. But the basic idea is I introduce some AI into my operations, and it is ineffective at doing what I wanted it to do in the first place. And oftentimes, if I don't even know what I want it to do, that's even worse. But it's going to disrupt operations. And so I've thought about that, and I say it a lot. And most of the time when I'm actually working with people, like on a consulting basis, I don't reflect on what I'm doing when I'm troubleshooting that problem. So when I'm talking to a client, I'm thinking, I have to reflect back on what am I asking the client. Most of the time, the first thing I ask is, what are you trying to get from the system? That's the first thing I'm asking. Why are you implementing this system there? And then there's the CETA framework is very good at like circumscribing all of the ways it affects the surrounding environment. But the basic core of what I'm trying to get at is, what's the value you want out of this? And that value, if you don't get that value, that is operational risk manifested, because you are wasting resources, you are changing your operations for no reason, you don't get the value. And so the thing I'm happy about having this framework now in my arsenal of educational arsenal and consulting arsenal, and I think other people need it in their arsenal, is that it preempts that. Because if you use this framework initially, what you're doing is you're making sure you're hyper focused on a goal. And in the course we talk about, you have to have a metric that you're going to measure. Like when you are the second, you're visualizing the operations, but the next thing that you're doing is you're really thinking about asking the right questions. Those questions lead to metrics. So can this be faster? That's a metric. You can actually measure that. Can this be better? There's a metric associated with better. What is better? It's higher quality. I get better reviews. There's ways of sort of putting metrics to this. And then when you do it this way, and then all the other steps, when you do it this way, you're not wasting time with just throwing the kitchen sink, throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. You're hyper focused on a given metric, and you can watch if that metric gets better or worse. And if it gets better, that's awesome. Let's roll it out, because the last thing is you need to experiment and evaluate. And so you do it on a pilot first, and then you roll it out. Once you know that it's bringing the value, that is going to make this operational risk that we've been sort of hammering people after the fact, that will make that be much less likely.
I'm curious, and maybe this is slightly rhetorical because of the context in which we exist. But you speak with a lot of people, whether it's a speaking engagement, the Q&As in our education, and consulting engagements, sales process. Shea, how many are you? Are you three people? But you speak to a lot of people, and I think a lot of it is reactionary. But I'm curious if you see this problem a lot, where people aren't asking these kinds of questions. And
I think Bryan, I'll let Bryan weigh in on this too, because I know Bryan's also talking to a lot of people here. But the short answer is absolutely. Because what we've seen since ChatGPT came out in 2022, basically everybody's been panicked about they're going to fall behind, right? And so you have boards and you have C-suite people rethinking their strategy. Like, what are we going to do, right? And so we have to get, there's the knee-jerk reaction of we just have to get some experience with AI. We got to do something. And so there, all of these pilot projects and things, and they're feeling, and of course every consultant or every management consulting firm is saying like you're going to fall behind, and that's the marketing, right? You're going to fall behind, and so people are rushing into things, and they most of the time they have not thought through this carefully enough. Even people at really big companies where it's like they're very sharp, right, because of the pressure, and so I think that it is very common that people implement something and then after the fact they're asking the questions about compliance, they're asking the questions about operational risk or other kinds of risk, and it's harder to clean up after you've already started.
So that's partly why I ask, and I'll say.
Mind if I jump in on that?
Let me segue this to you real quick because I do have a thought that connects to you. The reason I ask is I do wonder if we are in a vacuum sometimes because of, again, the context in which we're in, or if that is in fact like a broader systemic problem where it is just everyone's trying to figure out how to implement AI and they're reacting, and then you get that follow-up reaction.
Well, I see. Okay, so I want to answer that question.
Yeah.
What I heard you said, Shea, and this is what you said earlier, right? People need to understand their business. Really, if you just start putting AI out and you don't have any like defined KPI or anything that like measures success of that deployment, and you're just racing to do something with AI, inject it into your product, and it's just like we got to have something AI, like the likelihood of you succeeding is very, very low. And that is why you see these huge percentage like reports of huge like failure rates with AI projects. There's not even defined success. Like you don't even know what you're trying to achieve. You're just trying to participate some way, somehow. And I think executives are really nervous because they don't even know how to like think through what does success look like yet. Like that hasn't been defined.
That's a great
So I think this
point.
I think this is a great way to step into that. And there's lots of information starting to come out like these are best practices. And that's really what drives enterprises, best practice, right? And they have the resources and funds to employ that talent to win sustainably in the enterprise because they're constantly executing on best practice. And that's not been defined. I think this is an incredible foundational thought process. I wanted to attack the problem from a different perspective. So we've been talking, we don't know what we're doing in the enterprise. I see a lot of people, because I'm in startup arena, kind of people just have ideas. They're completely disorganized. They have no idea how to even frame their thought. They have really smart ideas, and I've seen this on some different like VC, like little infographics. It's like new people or like new startups and new ventures, they fail because they are distracted. They're thinking about 30 different things. AI allows this like almost like mind sprawl of thoughts, and it's everything's a possibility at this point. Well, I think what's the big point in this is figure out the right question to ask, figure out a metric, test it, figure it out. I think that's laid out perfectly in this. So I see a ton of value for enterprise clients, people trying to figure out, how do I even start this? How do I put more best practice into my enterprise or my business? And then I also see opportunity for people who are just trying to see potential in AI, disruption, right? New AI first business models to compete against old business models. Like they're both struggling for the same thing. Like they want a way to systematically roll out AI to win in a capitalism and all those things. So I see this, it plays on all spectrums of business. If you can figure out how to think systemically about AI and rolling it out, I see a lot of opportunity for all sorts of people here. And I think, it's not just thinking about risk mitigation, it's thinking about opportunity creation as well.
You said something in the middle of that. Remind me of your phrase. You said something about people trying to implement things and there's disorganization. Can you say that again? I had a question.
Yeah, I think people they have like kind of a sprawling thought. They're trying to
Yeah.
think of everything all at once and they can't figure it out and they're like overwhelmed. It's like
So
anxiety almost.
So my question is, I do wonder, why do you think that is? Because I think the three of us all agree that there is some confusion in the market. There is like a race, if you will. Is it just a lack in education? Is it just that it's new? The market is new. People, that there hasn't been consolidation. There hasn't been consensus yet. Maybe it is like a new framework or just some type of framework. Is it an AI specific problem? I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on why we do see this all the time.
My short answer is it's shiny object syndrome. People keep
That's a
think
good
like
one.
everything changes every day at this point. There's so much information, and Shay, you put some things out on LinkedIn. It's like you don't need to know everything. Just go deep on a topic. Like where do you want to focus and go deep? Like because if everyone else is staying very shallow and fast moving and trying to keep up with the newest, Claude or, Anthropic up there, whatever it is, like the new little feature release, like again, that's the wrong question and the wrong area to focus on. Like think about your business, think about what success is, define it, go deep and like do it well. And I think this really lays it out. That's my 2 cents, but I think people are distracted and it's easily to be distracted right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of hype. I think the hype cycle is real, but it's more amplified than, let's say, the hype cycle around cloud, or the original hype cycle around the internet. I mean, actually, that's maybe comparable to that. But I think a lot of the rhetoric around AI right now is how people are comparing it to fire and the wheel, things like this. Like it's just so transformative to humankind. And I do agree. Like I think that it definitely has the potential. And so what that means is that it's like a real existential there's an urgency, like it's like existential. So it's like it's like I'm a taxi driver. I own a taxi company right now, and Uber just came on the market. And I didn't see it, and all of a sudden, it's like a dinosaur, right? And I think that's what people are thinking. Is like I'm a bank, and it's like all of a sudden, is all banking going to be just totally AI agents or something, right? What like they don't even know what the risk is, but they do know that there's this powerful technology that is everybody's saying is going to transform society and business and everything. And that puts like a new level of urgency because they don't want to be the taxi company that when Uber came on the market. And that's fair. But I think what I say to when I'm talking to people, like casual conversations that would own businesses in these areas, is that there's always like this boom of stuff happening, but then most of the time it's the companies that know their business, that focus on what's the real value they're providing, that end up. And a lot of the stuff is hard. Like a lot of the things that are going to be long lasting are the hard problems of like infrastructure and how do I it's not the model per se. It's going to be like, how do I integrate it and test it and do it such that it's trustworthy. And it's all the hard stuff, and hard stuff takes a while, and hard stuff is not something that's just like you can get AI to do all the hard stuff for you. There's some high level thinking that does have to happen on your own. And so for me, it's like I think it's better to take a step back and focus on. I say first principles all the time, and people are like, stop saying first principles, but I do think first principles, like just focus on basic things that we know are true, that are always going to be true, and then grow from there. And that avoids the pitfalls of like taking what somebody said about how the world is going to change and then acting on that when I'm not connecting that with what's really happening in the world that we know is happening. Like everybody still has to take a shower, everybody still has to get to the store, everybody still has to eat. We all of these things exist. People have lives that need to be serviced in particular ways. That's what business is. And don't start from up here with like the Jetsons or something and then try to work backwards. If you focus on people, then you're gonna be much longer lasting, in my opinion, and that includes focusing on the risk because people can sue you.
It's
I
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
wanted to jump in on that because I think knowing your business is important, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a shift to really understanding your customers. What I would be concerned with is the optionality and new entrants for new ways of doing business if I'm a traditional business. Because you said it, cab companies existed forever and ever, right? Well, not truly, but that was the standard. And then someone came in with disruptive technology that enabled a new, better way of doing it that customers wanted, and they left the old way for a better new way. And I think that is the opportunity that people should pay attention to. Customers desire better options. AI can provide those in new ways with better ease. But if you really know that customer pain point, that's your business. Is that big enough to go and make a ton of money and be the next unicorn? I don't know. Every
Yeah.
market's different, but I think that is where focus should be. And I think that that is a big part of this too. So understanding how the technology solves that customer problem, that's really creating value for a customer. And if you can just make that easy, and AI makes so many things easy because it automates a lot. And if it's in line with that customer centric like mindset, I think that's the opportunity. Personally,
Yeah.
I hope I'm right, because I think that creates a lot more fun, interesting, valuable businesses. Like I really didn't like having to schedule or like grab a cab and like get money out of my pocket. Like it's like having it on my phone and like clicking yes, tip them, cool, and I'm out, and I can get better receipts for expense reports. Like that's way better for me. So thinking about your customers, I think, is super important in that. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, that's where
Yeah.
I see that.
I agree with that. And I think we're starting to see a lot of the, you know, art is probably the best example of this. There's people that are willing to do AI art, and there are people that are willing to go to the artist and go old school. My takeaway from this conversation is also do it right, not fast. That's kind of one of my takeaways. But I see we're coming up on time here. Shea, maybe you want to bring us back in. I'd be excited to see if you write a white paper on this framework. I'm super excited about it. I think it makes perfect sense. I think there's a lot of value for business owners and operations people and anybody trying to implement AI. But yeah, maybe you want to bring us back in and tell us more about the
Yeah.
cert.
I mean, I think so. First things first, I got to get this certification
Yeah.
done, and it's been delayed because of things like this. Because I was a professor for 11 years, and I really care about getting it right. Because there's so much. I don't want to call it crap, but there is a lot of crap out there where just there's so many people just coming up with stuff just for the sake of it, and it's making content like you gotta market and all that stuff. So I'm not faulting anybody for this, but there is some stuff that's better than others that come from experience, and so I I want it to be good. I want the people to be able to actually do something with it, not just like rehash like, there are 5 risks and here are they're, machine learning versus AI or whatever. Like I want it to be really actionable. So once that's done, I think having a white paper on this would be wonderful, and or a webinar, because part of the thing like that was frustrating for me sometimes in consulting situations is that the experience we get on focusing on the risk side, I didn't quite realize exactly how much on the value side we've gained as a company, because we've seen so many examples of just between startups and enterprises, people trying things, failing, implementing them the right way, better and worse, struggling with how they operationalize things, that I didn't quite realize how much we actually could be beneficial in terms of our mindset on the front end of like, let's build the value separate from the not separate from the risk. The fact that the risks are combined and it's holistic that way, I didn't quite realize it. And so part of what's opening my mind is me thinking about, okay, we're an audit and a consulting firm around AI risk and compliance. How can we flip the script and also be useful on the front end as implementers, people who are guiding people to implement the right way the first time? And part of me hates that idea because then we're like competing against the McKinseys and the Deloittes and all this stuff. But I think if we can compete better, because I have a feeling that we can do it better. I think we can do it better, and I haven't quite figured out all the little pieces of that. But I think when we do, we will be a real resource for people who are like want to think differently about this from the beginning. And so, long story short, white paper, webinars, whatever. I think that you're going to see more of this mindset from BABL moving forward. Yeah. So, any last thoughts from you two guys before I close this out?
What I heard you just say there, Shea, is there's a better way to do it from the old way of doing it. We're new. We have a framework. We think we know how we can help bring value in a different way that other people aren't. I think that's kind of been part of the narrative I've had on this whole topic. So I think it is par for the course. I'm excited for it. I know this is what we're trying to do. We're not quite there yet either. Partnerships. So if you're listening to this and you're out talking to people, get ahead of the curve with me. We've already signing up partners to work with BABL, so that we can help bring in these types of concepts to your firm, right? So as a little plug on the partnership, that's weeks away at the longest. So I agree.
I also agree. I'm also super excited about this certification. Also, we have a lot of we're going to be making courses to tag on to this that are domain specific. So look for those in the coming months. AI governance for legal professionals, for HR professionals. A bunch of interesting content is coming, and it's all around this value add and how to identify risk, manage it, do AI correctly. And my final thoughts are: do it right, not fast.
Very good. All right. Thanks for coming, guys. If you are listening to this on a podcast, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe always helps us out. And we're going to catch you next time on Lunchtime BABLing.